Economics looks at three key questions. What should we make? How should we make it? And who gets it once it's made? So we want to dive into these questions. Now we can look at them from various different perspectives. We can look at it from the consumer's perspective, right? What as a individual do I like? Can I afford? What do I want to buy? How much am I willing to pay? We can look at it from the business's perspective. That is, what should we make? How much should we make? How should we make it? We can also look at it from the government's perspective. We can look at how we organize our society, what type of economy we are, and that determines the third question, for whom. But you can also look at what do you encourage as a society? Are you subsidizing some industries so that you're encouraging the production of certain types of goods or services? Are you taxing certain methods that reduces the likelihood to produce a certain way? So we look at these three questions: what do we make, how do we make it, and for whom, from multiple different perspectives. So let's dig in and look at these questions. Let's start with the first one. So the first question is, what do we make? And we really have two options here. We can make goods or we can make services. So goods are tangible things people want. That is, it is something you can touch. A laptop, a chair, a sandwich. People have to want it. Remember, the wants can be luxuries or necessities, but it has to be something that you can physically touch. In comparison, surveys are intangible things that people want. So services would be your oil change, would be someone doing your taxes for you. So it's not really something you can touch. It's often something that someone does. Okay. So we can choose goods or services as we choose what to make. Now, is it possible for a company to make goods and services? Is it possible that you can get both simultaneously? Well, when you think about it, when you go and get your oil changed, you are getting oil, so that's the good, but someone else is pulling the old oil out and putting new oil in, so providing a service. Same thing at a restaurant, right? Someone is bringing you the food and taking it away, cleaning the dishes, but they also are providing you with something, and that is that physical food that you are eating. So it's possible to have both. When it comes to those goods, we can further break it down into consumer goods and capital goods. So consumer goods are goods that are satisfying a need or a want by the end consumer. So you buy an Xbox, you play video games, consumer good. In comparison, a capital good is a good that someone makes and then is used to make something else. So someone makes a hammer, we use that hammer to build a house, and we sell that house. Now, goods can be both consumer and capital goods because that hammer could also be bought by me at Home Depot or Lowe's and used to hang up a picture. And you'll notice in my room, I need some pictures. So a good can be a capital good or a consumer good. It's really whether or not it's being used to make something else or whether it's being used by the end user. So we have goods, consumer goods or capital goods, and we have services. So here's just a visualization to show you kind of that capital goods. So we take our resources, we're going to call these in a moment, we'll call these factors of production. So we'll take those factors of production, which we'll learn about just momentarily, and then we use those to either make a consumer good, so we make a sandwich that we sell, or we make a capital good, so a tool, machine, make something that is then used to make something else, and you can see here that making something else, that else ends up being a consumer good. So if we make goods, can we make bads? So remember, we define goods as tangible things people want. So then a bad, by definition, would be a tangible thing, something you can touch, that people don't want. Okay. So are there bads? So for example, cigarettes, are they bad? Well, there's people who want them. Heroin, is it a bad? Well, again, you can touch it and there are people who want it. What about nuclear weapons? Well, there are countries that want it. So again, these are all goods, not bads. So what is a bad? Well, bads tend to be the byproducts. When we make something that people want, the good, if there are leftovers that people don't want, then we have a bad. So that would be more like the nuclear waste that's produced if no one wants it. All right, so we have goods, and when it comes to goods, we have capital and consumer. We have services. So the question is, what do we make? We can choose a consumer good or a capital good or something that is both, or we could choose to provide a service. So what do we produce in Canada? Well, if you look at the graph on the left, what you see are the jobs. Most people in Canada work in the service sector. So it's about 79% currently who work in the service sector, with the remaining working in more manufacturing, mining, and agriculture. So most of our jobs are in services. On the right, you can see GDP, which is gross domestic product. That's the total value of everything we make in Canada. And when we look at the value of what we make, most of the value is also in services. 72% of the total value of everything we make is in services. So it's likely that you will end up working in some kind of service sector, service industry. So when we decide what to make, we have to consider scarcity. Is what we are going to what we want to make, is it available to us? Do we have the resources? Do we have the employees necessary in order to make what we want to make? Right? We can't choose to produce oil if our province doesn't have any oil under the ground, right? So it has to be available. We have to have access to the raw materials that we need. If we are doing something that requires highly skilled workers, we have to have a pool of workers that have that skill or training. So we need to consider the availability of the resources that we're going to need. We have to look at the cost. So if things are scarce, right? So if you can't find something, then they tend to be more expensive. When it's hard to find workers, when the unemployment rate is low, right? How do you get good workers? Well, you have to steal them away and pay more for them. So the more scarce something is, the more costly it becomes. So we have to look at when we decide what to make, do we have the resources we need? Do we have the expertise that we need? And can we afford those resources? Because again, the more scarce they are, the harder it is the more expensive they will be. We also have to consider if we have the customer base for it. Is there demand? Do customers want it? So here you see some McHits and McMisses. That is, these are products from McDonald's over time, and some of them have stuck around and others have not. So can you identify the products that are no longer available? Well, the Hula Burger is no longer available, right? This one had pineapple on it. Other things that are not available. The Arch Deluxe. This was their gourmet hamburger. And the McLean Deluxe. This one was supposed to be the healthy alternative, although it still had 35% of the daily fat that you're supposed to have in it. Other things that aren't around anymore. Well, the 55-cent specials aren't around anymore, and that's due to inflation. As the cost to make the burger or fries increase, they can no longer sell them for 55 cents. The other one that's no longer around is the Big Extra, and this was a bigger burger to compete with Burger King's Whopper. So we have to consider, as we said, scarcity, which is going to impact the availability of the materials we're going to need, and it's going to impact the cost. We have to consider, is there customer demand? Are there people who are willing to buy this product, use this service? The other thing we have to consider is an opportunity cost. So opportunity cost, switch back here to our black, is the value of the next best alternative. So we have to consider the sacrifice that we make. Every time you make a choice, there is an opportunity cost. So for example, when you had breakfast this morning, if you had cereal, then there was something else you didn't have. You didn't have oatmeal. If you came to class, then that's time you didn't spend at work or taking a nap, hanging out with your friends. There's a sacrifice that you make. So because we have scarcity, we have limited resources. Those are time, money, energy. We're going to have to make a decision. How are we going to use that limited time? So you have limited time, you came to class, that's a choice that you made, and the opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative. So if you came to class for an hour, and in that time period you could have made 20 bucks working, then the opportunity cost of coming to class is the 20 bucks you gave up. Okay? Now, it's not just money, it's not just the paycheck when we talk about opportunity cost. We said that we have limited time, we have limited energy. So we have to consider those sacrifices also in terms of the value of our leisure. So if I'm working for an hour to make money, then what I sacrificed is that enjoyment, that relaxation that I would have got. And in economics, we use the term utility. We're going to look at this in more detail, but this is how we quantify our satisfaction. Oops. And we actually measure it in utils for utility. So we need to be able to put a value on things. So we need to value the level of happiness we get from an activity. We need to be able to value our time in terms of what is your time worth. So we have to consider as we make choices what we gave up and what that sacrifice costs. So you probably heard the statement, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So even if I invited all of you out for lunch today and said, it's on me, I'm paying, there is still an opportunity cost for you. Yes, you don't have to pay for lunch, but that's time you could have spent doing something else, which has value to you. So we can't have or make everything we want. Now, when it comes to opportunity costs, we have the consumer who has unlimited wants but limited resources. So you can't do all of the vacations that you want because you have to be at work or school. You can't buy everything you want because you don't have enough income. And if you worked all day, every day, there's only so much time in the day. So you can't work more than 24 hours in a day. So there are trade-offs, right? There's that sacrifice that we're making. Businesses also have an opportunity cost. If you are McDonald's and you decide to make hamburgers, then that's raw materials and manpower not being used to make French fries. If you decide to have an employee man the cash register, then that employee is not cleaning the floors or the washrooms. So there is an opportunity cost when we decide what to make and how to make something, because we direct our resources in one way, which means we're not putting it somewhere else. And so these are choices we have to make as a business, and there are choices we have to make as a consumer. So our first question was, what do we make? We make goods and services. The next question we're going to look at is, how do we make it?